What is up, all you minties? This is the Uncanny Omar here from Near Mint Condition, and join me today as I go over the 10 best graphic novels of all time, according to me. So, please stay tuned. And welcome back, everybody. Now, this is a list that I put together, and it is a very difficult list because anytime I do these top 10s, I'm always like, no, I gotta move this over here. Why would I not put this here? And I'm sure you are going to see a lot of these books in other people's top 10 list. Now, I've done top 10 Omnis, I've done top 10 DC. No, I haven't yet, but I will. Top 10 DC Omnis and top 10 Marvel Omnis. But this is more about the graphic novels, just my suggested reading. Because I know a lot of you all are worried that you might be at home for a while for the next few weeks. So, look, if anybody's ready to be away from other people and become introverts, it's us collectors. We got a lot of backlogs. So this is my top 10 suggested reading. If you've never read any of these books, these are the ones that I suggest you go out there and read. So let's kick it off. Now, as I mentioned, you are going to see some of these books in other people's lists, but you know what? They probably deserve to be on those lists because they are that good. So we're kicking it off with Watchmen. This is Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' masterpiece. This is when Alan Moore was given the writing duties to bring over some characters from Charlton Comics after the Crisis on Infinite Earths, like Blue Beetle and Captain Atom. But the story was just so damn good that DC decided, you know what? Let's just make it a standalone story. You can write about these characters, these superheroes in real life, and just do your own thing. And they did. And they built this entire we are still making shows in 2019 about characters that are based on this book. It is a must read if you have not read it. It reads more like a novel than a comic book. And I know that's kind of silly because if you want to do that, why not read a novel? But there's a reason why this medium exists, because it goes back and forth between novel and book and comic book, and then when it all comes together at the end, you are just blown away by how amazing this is. I'm not spoiling any of this, by the way, of any of these books, but I do just want to point out the fact what makes this so great. It feels so real, and for the first time, for a book that came out in 1985, 86, this is way ahead of its time. So much so that a lot of the social commentaries we are still talking about to this day in 2019 and 2020. I was mainly talking about the Watchmen TV show on HBO, but Watchmen. Number 2, The Far Side. And no, this is not in any kind of countdown or chronological order. These are just books that I'm talking about. The Far Side to me is probably the funniest thing that I've ever read in comic format. And I realize that they're single panel comic strips, but it doesn't matter. When I lost my dog a couple of years ago, or whenever I'm going through some bad times, this is one of those books that just lifts my spirits and just reminds me that everything is still going to be okay no matter how bad times get. And I think it's time for me to start sharing it with my kids. But if you have not read any of this, oh man. And the fact that he brought it back on a website, I think it's like a webcomic now, or I guess a single panel webcomic, makes it so much awesome. But this is The Far Side. It's available in softcover, and I don't think I have to tell you all what Watchmen is available in because it's available everywhere in trade paperback, digital. But this is they have a softcover collection. They have many softcover collections, but this is the complete set that collects everything from 1980 to 1994. And this is the hardcover edition. It's a big book. It's a big slipcase. So next up, we have this book that is in widescreen format. This is the Eternaut. It is originally released in Argentina, so it's been translated from the Spanish to English by Fantagraphics. It was written by Hector Herman Osterheld and drawn by Francisco Solano Lopez. And it is a wonderful I think it was a serial from 1952 to 54, if I'm not mistaken. But it's about this snow, how it's killing off humanity, and there's aliens behind it, but who is really behind it? And it's a resistance story. So, as a matter of fact, the character, the lead character right here, Juan Salvo, his image is still used in Latin America as a form of resistance. So that's how much impact not only the story, but just comic books have on people in general. So that's why I think this belongs on the list, and if you have not read it, it is a masterpiece. Next up on the list is Marvels, I guess. But anyway, this came out in 1995, and this is Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross's just wonderful story, retelling a lot of the old Silver Age stories from Spider-Man and the Avengers and the Fantastic Four and X-Men through the eyes of a character that's just a news reporter, a photographer. So this is a huge masterpiece. We've done an old reader, new reader on this. The artwork is completely stunning, and the story and the dialogue makes it feel so real. It's like you are putting yourself in the shoes of the humans, the bystanders, and really you don't see that, at least back then, you really didn't see that a lot, and you see that more often now, but I think this is the one that stands out. And it shows you what a good superhero story is through the eyes of an everyday Joe. And I think that's why it belongs on this list. That and the art is just beautiful. It's available in the monster size format. They have a 25th anniversary that came out, and I'll be doing an overview of that. And also in trade paperbacks, digital format. So if you've not read this, it is completely worth your time. How could I have a list of essential graphic novel reading or best graphic novels without mentioning Art Spiegelman's masterpiece here, Mouse? Now, this made it on my top 20 non-superhero comic book stories, of course, because I've done that list as well, but I think it's essential reading. It is probably one of the most important reads of in books, in comics, whatever medium it is. It's one of the most important reads, and one that probably should be in schools everywhere. I know my wife had it in her classroom when she taught high school English classes. So this is the story of the Holocaust and also the present day about a son and a father's relationship. The father survived the Holocaust, and now he's trying to deal with his son after his wife passed away, and that relationship, with also flashbacks of the stories back here. And it's all done through animals. Like, they didn't have to be animals, but, you know, the Jewish people are mice, the Nazis were cats, and then the Americans were dogs, and it's just... man, it's such a powerful story. If you've never read it, do yourself a favor and just read it sometime soon. I'm the Uncanny Omar. I have to have an X-Men book in here. And I don't have to, but I think that this one just represents what comic books are to me. And that is, this is Uncanny Xmen Volume 3, the Omnibus Edition. But one of the big stories in here, and I just love that these stories in here, all by Chris Claremont. You have Paul Smith on artwork. You have Dave Cockrum on artwork. But the big thing that I wanted to point out from this was the God Loves, Man Kills storyline. That, to me, is probably the best superhero story I have ever read. It's so real and so dark and so good. It is a representation. I've gone on. If you've watched this channel for a few years, I'm sure you're tired of me talking about God Loves, Man Kills. But it is. It's the epitome of what an X-Men story should be. It's everything what a superhero story should be. It's the realistic aspects. You know, during Chris Claremont's run, and if I could pick a run, I would definitely pick Chris Claremont's run all the way from the beginning in 95 all the way up until his last issue, X-Men number 3. But that's kind of cheating. But if I had to summarize it in one book, it would be this one. This one's out of print, but it will be coming back into print in November of 2020. And God Loves is getting a gallery edition. So God Loves, Man Kills will get that if you want to read just that. And if you've never read it, you can also read it through trade paperback and digitally. But if you've ever wondered what X-Men was about, I think that is the best representation. It shows all these social commentaries, because they've always been a part of comic books, but just done so properly, right? Oh man. And it shows it shows the best of humanity through a group of characters that aren't even humans. So it's wonderful. Sorry, sometimes it's hard to contain a fanboy when I go through some of these. This is Akira by Katsuhiro Otomo. It's been available from Dark Horse. It's been available from Marvel Comics when they used to have their Epic line. And it's been available through Kodansha as a thick trades. And now it's available as a box set and hardcovers. But whatever way you read it, you gotta read it. It is an amazing story. And one that just built this huge movement, not only in Japan but over everywhere. Like, everybody knows about Akira. I mean, it is such a great story about Neo Tokyo and a possible future and what happens when government gets corrupt. It's about a resistance movement. It's got psychic, so it's got a little bit of supernatural elements in there, a lot. And if you've seen the movie, I guess it would be like compared to Dune, right? Anybody that's seen Dune and liked it, I'm always like, you gotta read the book. That's exactly how I feel about Akira. If you've seen the movie and remotely liked it, oh, you gotta read the book because all the characters are so much more fleshed out and they're so much more past what happens in the movie. So Akira's on that list, of course. And right now is a good time to remind you to please hit that like button. Thank you. And if you don't have a subscription to the channel, please think about subscribing and ring that bell for notifications. 8 on the list is Neil Gaiman's Sandman. And I bring this up because it's one of the most perfect books I've ever read. It is deep and has so many layers. And it starts off a little slow. This one, I think, has probably one of the biggest slow burns because it has superhero elements at first from DC. Then about issue 11, so this is the absolute. It's also available in trade paperbacks. It's available just like Watchmen in just about every format, omnibus format. But the deal with this is that the first 10 issues, like you could see Batman and Martian Manhunter, just characters like that appearing through here. And then it just kind of becomes its own thing. And I mean its own thing as it's built like a mythos. I mean, I remember Sandman blowing up so much with kids in the 90s that you would see like Darlene and Roseanne wearing a Sandman shirt. And this is before Hot Topic was that thing, but you would see kids with Sandman shirts. And that was the first time I remember in high school. I'm like, man, that kid is wearing a comic book shirt. That's awesome. You never see anybody, like, or at least where I was from, wearing like an X-Men stuff. It was all Sandman. It was either Death or Sandman. But it is a beautiful story. It is a dreamlike story. It's got a powerful message and so many layers. And I can go on about this, and I think it's time to do an old reader or a new reader on this so I can do a deeper discussion about this wonderful series. This is a representation to me about the comic book medium because I don't care if you make a movie, if you make an HBO limited series, if you make it into a play, whatever it is, it won't be Sandman because there's a reason why this medium exists, and this is one of those few books that no matter what they do or throw at me, even if Neil Gaiman himself is writing this stuff, it won't be Sandman. It can only be experienced through this comic book medium. So that's why it's on this list. We're getting down to the last 2, and of course, if you've been following me for a long time, you know that this book had to make it on the list. This is The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck by Don Rosa. Collected in the Fantagraphics Library Editions, volumes 4 and 5, but they also just recently released a box set with just that story, so if you want to get it that way. It's also been available from Boom Comics, and just about every few years we've had a reprint of this phenomenal story. I was lucky enough that somebody, when I was reading just X-Men and Avengers and Superman and Batman, back when I was in high school, gave me a copy of his Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck. And I never looked back. It is amazing. It lived up to what he was saying. Because I was like, why are you reading Duck comics, man? That's like for kids, right? I know it's such a stupid statement from a guy that's reading about heroes in spandex. But, I mean, that was the mentality. That was my mentality. And now, these days, the older I get, the more I relate to Scrooge McDuck, who is a duck. I mean, yes, he's anthropomorphic, but still, the more I relate to this character, more than I do humans in comic books. So it is well worth it. And the one that I highly suggest is the story, or yeah, The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, which is his story from beginning up until where he is these days, like how he got started. It means a lot to me, and man, it's a wonderful read. So here's the last book. And I'm sorry if you didn't see enough X titles. I'm sorry if you didn't see enough superheroes or enough indie titles or Berserk. But this list was hard. And it's all subjective anyway. It all depends on your taste. But the last one I'm going to talk about is probably the one that means a lot to me. And that is Starman. I can't talk about this damn series without getting teary-eyed. So I'm not going to do that. It is basically the story of Jack Knight, who is an everyday guy, and he is drawn back to Opal City. He's also a collector, which, I relate to. However, his dad is the Golden Age Starman. And the Golden Age Starman wants to hand down, because he's an old man now, his staff for the next hero. So he's passing down the family business. In this case, the family business is superheroes. Jack is not interested at all. Gives it to his older brother. His older brother ends up getting killed on the first mission. And I know it's not a big spoiler, because that's literally issue 1. And from then on, Jack has to take up the mantle of Starman. And it is probably one of the most beautiful books I've ever read. And I really hope DC brings this back in omnibus format. I know they canceled the omnibus, but you got to get these out to people's hands. It is an amazing ride from beginning to end. To me, just as good as any of those other books. This is not a countdown or anything, but it is one of the most important reads. And we'll do an old reader, new reader on it, but it's phenomenal. The artwork is great. It's all written by James Robinson. And this is his magnum opus. As a matter of fact, the afterword and forward in here are just as good as the comic book, because he talks about where he was in time. And this got me through some rough spots in my life, and I'll talk about that. I know y'all have been wanting me to do what got me into comics, or my story with comic books, and I will talk about that. So this is Starman, belongs on this list. And most of these, with the exception of the Starman Omnibus, you can find through our sponsor,
cheapgraphicnovels.com, your online home for brand new graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off the cover price. Cheap Graphic Novels prides itself on packaging your books so they arrive safely and in excellent condition, as well as prompt and helpful service. And check out their bargain bin for even greater deals up to 90% off cover price. And for you Minties, Cheap Graphic Novels is running a special promotion. If you're a first-time customer, let them know you were referred by Near Mint Condition at the checkout, and you'll receive a credit for free shipping on your next order. Now, this is only for U.S. customers. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discounts, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
Now, that was my top 10 must-reads, essentials. I'm not even sure what I'm going to call this episode. I hate to call it best graphic novels. I'm not really clickbaity like that, but whatever I end up calling it, and I'll probably end up calling it best graphic novels of all time. What is your list? What would you put on your top 10 if somebody were to ask you, give me 10 comic books that you have to read? What would you put on there? Do you agree with anything that I put in here? What would you put on your list? If it's manga, you don't have to do manga. Whatever you want to put on there, I'd love to know. Leave those comments down below. Please don't forget to smash that like button. Hit the notifications button to let you know when our videos are going live. We can be found on Patreon and Redbubble, and thank you so much to our patrons. We have a new lighting system and a new mic, all because of you guys. You all made that possible. It's a big shout out to you all. And remember, if it's classy and cool, it must be Near Mint.